Commando's amazing, the body count in that.
But when I was a kid, I thought all those kills were legit. Like, you get shot with a knife, dead immediately.
Mm-hmm.
You get a skill saw blade
thrown at your head,
getting chopped off.
I remember being like third grade, something like that, and I was at the babysitter's after school. They had like a 2 or 3 hour wait for my mom to pick me up, and I remember sitting alone in a room because I don't know where the other kids were. I don't know, but I was at this babysitter, and they had one VHS and one box of Lincoln Logs. That was the only toys they had. Mm-hmm. And I remember building a log cabin and watching Commando over and over.
That's some shit right
there.
That
was the VHS. The VHS they had was Commando.
You know, it's funny. It's crazy how whenever you're a little kid and you think back to times like that and you're like, what the fuck was I doing there? Like, somebody put me in a room to watch Commando and build shit with Lincoln Logs, and that was my life. You know what I mean? Like, that's some crazy shit.
Some kind of MK Ultra program or something. I'm gonna go somewhere and I'll see a log cabin and it'll trigger me, and I'll try to assassinate some dude that has a beard like Abraham Lincoln or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's weird stuff. It's weird how too things in your childhood. Mm-hmm. There's things that you just remember that you're like, why the hell is that so important in my mind?
Why
that
did
I
it
can
stick?
Remember every detail of that time, you know.
Here's something that you guys should check out because we have talked about these different fringe topics. So the idea of the MPD, DID, dissociative identity disorder, is very controversial and people debate it and stuff like that. So I bought a bunch of books this week from some of the top MDs and physicians that deal with the subject. Mm-hmm. And I went and I watched all the YouTube documentaries I could find on it. So I'll send you guys a link to this one, but you should check it out because there is one really crazy documentary that HBO did like back in 1990 or something. Mm-hmm. Old school documentary, and it details the lives of three people, and the psychiatric, people that they're working with, and Colin Ross, who has a whole bunch of interviews and talks on this subject, who's the author of a bunch of the books that I bought. He is a consultant on this documentary. And what's interesting is that in every one of these cases, the people had some kind of like ritual abuse when they were a kid. And so this is dealing with, with people that actually have, the DID, mm-hmm. The rarely diagnosed, DID, which is pretty extreme phenomena. So I think it's real. We don't think you guys and I have ever talked about it. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think that's real. Where you're talking about how they become a different person, right?
Yeah, the period when they were traumatized, or later traumas too, mm-hmm. that the brain has the self-defense mechanism of creating a dissociative state to where the person feels like it was happening to someone else.
Yeah.
So if they were, a lot of times in the cases that I was reading and in those documentaries, it's somebody who was abused and molested maybe when they were 5 by a parent or some authority figure, and so what happens oftentimes is that they dissociate from that age period, and there are triggers or things in their life that might cause them to revert to that 5-year-old state, even when they're in their 30s or 40s.
Right.
So it's very difficult, in my view, to think that all of these people are acting and making it up. Mm-hmm. No. So, and most of those documentaries are pretty fascinating because, I think that there's a lot that we don't know about the psyche, the mind, the soul. And I think a lot of times the establishment tries to give the impression that they have it all figured out. So they kind of play a confidence game.
Yeah,
but you'll notice in these documentaries and the interviews, a lot of times they're like, we don't really know what this is. We don't have a clue, but we think it's this. And so it's something that's being studied. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not. And for a long time, they were discounting it, and they were saying, oh, it's just an American phenomenon, and so therefore can't be real. It would be happening everywhere. But not everywhere has the psychiatric infrastructure that the U.S. has to call it those names. So I'm not saying that everything about the American medical system is good per se, but I'm saying that, you know, you can have the same phenomenon in other cultures. They might be calling it spirit possession or something, like, who knows, right?
Right. No, I think it's 100% real. I mean, I think that that your mind can splinter, or whatever it is you want to call it, whatever that this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
well, let me ask you guys this, as former military dudes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the authors and doctors and psychiatrists and so that write on this topic, they will speak about the studies that were done by Tavistock Institute on shell shock and PTSD.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
Do you have any
I don't
insight
have any
or analysis of that,
or any insight on that. I mean, to be honest, but
yeah, you know, like shell shock or whatever. That's from the World War II or something.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, but like flashbacks, you know, that was all about Vietnam, right?
Oh, yeah, right. That's
my dad,
a good intuition.
My dad was in Vietnam, and he actually like fought in combat. And then I always heard stories about people's uncles or, you know, so and so that they knew that would, you know, couldn't go deer hunting anymore because they didn't see a gun. They'd have a flashback and be crawling around on the ground, pointing guns at them and stuff. And I asked my dad about it. You know, I'm like, well, what's the deal? Do you ever have this? And, you know, this was like a kid before I had like any kind of filter. And he's like, I don't have that. I've never known anybody that's had that or anything like that. So I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. You know, I don't have any personal, you know, like insight into any, like PTSD or anything like that. But I don't know. I mean, I think that it's kind of like you said a second ago. I feel like everyone thinks they have everything figured out. Like, oh, we know everything there is to know about the brain or the human body or about the world or existence in general. Like, oh, we got it all figured out right now. This is the most, you know, education or whatever you want to call it. And it's funny, I was thinking about that on the way over here, is, you know, you could talk to people that won't believe in like any kind of God or anything like that. Like, oh, this is, you know, science has explained existence. This is what happened. That's it. And I want to ask those people. I don't know how I got to this point, but I want to ask those people, like, so go back 200 years. You go up to the smartest person in the world, and they say, "Hey, you know, people are getting sick because so and so down the street's casting spells on them." What makes you any different than that person? Yeah. 200 years from now, people are going to go back and say, "They were saying this, right?"
Yeah.
But so
sons of bitches casting spells.
So when people sit there and try to say, like, "Oh, we got the mind figured out. This is the reason behind that," I don't think we know anything. I mean, I say that we know some, but there could be shit. I think there's a lot more to the mind that we don't even have a clue about. And then to know that people can revert back to a younger age based off like stress,
trauma,
So when you that just kind of like makes me believe more of like all these programs where the government, you know, like programs people, kids, you know, like the Hollywood stories about people being molested and stuff to be like brought into this. It makes it more believable. But
well, that's what Colin Ross writes about. He actually writes about that very, very topic, and he does tend to vindicate the thesis that it does happen to, you know, kids, and it is a kind of programming and this kind of stuff. So absolutely, if I recall, shell shock is World War I was when they first started noticing it, and then not too long after World War I was the creation of Tavistock in the UK, and that was created with Rockefeller money. And they set that up over there to study not just shell shock, but also all these other kinds of social engineering techniques. And then that eventually became kind of the UK counterpart to MK Ultra. So actually MK Ultra program in the US, which was dozens of universities all of the psychiatric institutions, for the most part, the big ones, many of which were actually CIA fronts eventually over time. The American Psychological Association, Ewan Cameron, he was the head of it for a period. He was one of the key MKUltra doctors. So it was all being run in tandem, with Tavistock Institute and all that. So I think, it's a lot. There's a lot more to it. It's a lot broader of a project than people tend to think. It wasn't just a military research into truth drugs or hypnotic couriers. That was just like a tiny aspect of what it was. The majority of it was social engineering. What were we talking about? Oh, Phoenix Program. Yeah, that's pretty crazy stuff. You would be interested in that book. Where is it? Somewhere here. Douglas Valentine has a book, Phoenix Program, and it's about the CIA's project, which, by the way, is roughly connected to MKUltra, of how to terrorize the Viet Cong.
Oh, no, I do remember. I was reading something about this on the internet. Actually.
Yeah, that's a real program, and he actually spoke to William Colby, who was head of CIA at the time, who created the project. And William Colby contacted Douglas Valentine, according to Valentine's account, because he, had kind of pieced this together by interviewing Vietnam vets. And so the book, I mean, it all sounds pretty legit to me, but obviously there's the drug angle to Golden Crescent and all that stuff with Vietnam and all that, but Golden Triangle, excuse me. But it was a specific new approach to terrorizing Viet Cong, and it involved kind of the creation or the profiling and finding dudes that were psychopathic. So when you watch movies like Apocalypse Now, the Marlon Brando character is pretty much kind of the archetype. I mean, I'm not saying it was that necessarily extreme. I don't know. Who knows how real it is, but the carnage, but the idea of other researchers is that might play into the serial killer phenomenon, that maybe some of these dudes, who had experienced all that were brought back, because of the timing of the rise of the serial killer is kind of concurrent with all that. Dave McGowan has a really cool book on that, but I don't know, it's pretty crazy stuff. But
what was that book called?
Phoenix Program.
Douglas Valentine's Phoenix Program book, and then Program to Kill by Dave McGowan.